probably getting on about the limit of what that would stand. It was fitted with return rollers because the track was fairly heavy. You don't normally see return rollers on a Christie tank. The Comet has a crew of 5, that's 3 men in the turret, a driver and a whole machine gunner in the front. And with that gun, it had a 77mm gun, which was nearly as effective as the old 17-pounder that had originally been fitted onto the Sherman Firefly. And with that gun, it could actually go up against the Tiger and take it out. Didn't always work, but it was worth a try. You could do it if you wanted to. The tank's fairly well armoured. It's about 150 odd millimetres thick at the front, same as a Churchill. But it was always very, very popular, but arrived too late to see much action, really. Only on the final advance into Germany did you find the A34s leading the way.
Those of you can hear that lovely engine note going around. Of course, the engine is really a derated Spitfire engine. It's the Merlin engine from the Spitfire, derated, put in a tank, and it was called Meteor. And they didn't bother with silencers. If you watch as the tank goes past, there's 2 little fishtail exhausts on the rear, and there's a lovely rumble as it goes around. Makes a very distinctive noise. One for the tank stoppers out there. We often wondered why the front of the tank doesn't have a flat glacé plate, and that was because at the time, tank design, they insisted it had a flat plate at the front to fit the standard Beezer machine gun. So that was in production. They didn't want to change that. They only dropped that flat front for fitting that machine gun mount when they come onto the Centurion, even though at the time they knew that sloped armour, not only did it help with the potential for ricochet, by sloping armour on a vehicle, it means you thicken the armour. If there's a tank firing at you, that horizontal round has got more armour to go through if it's going horizontally, and the armour's sloped than if it's vertical. So it's a way of adding protection without adding weight to the tank.
Now the tank we're showing you now doesn't look much like a tank at all, does it? It's actually, they've only built a few of them, it's the Centurion Beach Armoured Recovery Vehicle, also known as the BARV, B-A-R-V. And the idea is that it can work on the beach, it can go into the water up as far as the lip around the top of the tank and operate recovering lost ground vehicles, which can carry the diver, you can get down and tow ropes to them, but it also using the pusher bar on the front. They're used on the British Royal Naval assault ships and fearless and so on, and also on most landing craft that carried a few tanks. So they are very unusual. It's quite an honour for us at Covington to have been given one. There aren't that many of them about. But otherwise, underneath it all, it's a very ordinary Centurion, with the Centurion same Hotchkiss type horizontally spun suspension, Rolls-Royce Meteor engine in the Mac, and the Merritt round transmission.
The BARV was first designed in the Second World War. It's built on a Sherman's chassis. We've actually got the wreck of a BARV. Some of you may have noticed it in one of our car parks. It was pulled off as Salisbury Plain. All the Sherman BARVs that were converted in the Second World War were actually used on D-Day. And so they're a fairly rare vehicle. Only 12 of these Centurion BARVs are actually made, and we're not 100% certain about our history on this one. We do know it was on Fearless and Intrepid during its life, but if some went down to the Falklands Islands during the Falklands War, and if you study some of the photographs, they were used there, and you can see as it comes around those wooden blocks on the front, because once those flat-bottom boats had landed there, whether it was vehicles, ammunition or the infantry, they needed pushing back out, especially in tidal areas where it only takes 20 minutes and you've lost that opportunity to float off yourself. So that's why a vehicle like this is essential for beach landings. something that was picked up by the British, certainly after the Dieppe landings.
The other thing about it is that certainly from the driver's point of view, he's sitting down below in a sort of box-like structure with a very thick panel of glazing in front of him, and that's necessary to keep the water out when in deep water. And he can't really see a thing when it's got to fish this time, so he has to be conned with someone on top of him. And that must make it difficult to drive it.
Now, driving around in front of me now, ladies and gentlemen, probably what I would argue one of the best tanks ever made. This is the British Centurion tank that was first, the stipulation for it was put out in 1943. They decided back then at the time that reliability was going to be the first priority, because we were fed up in Britain of making tanks that seemed so unreliable, considered, compared to American tanks and certainly the German tanks as well. And they put firepower above protection and protection over mobility. These are all things that make up tanks. And the Centurion, they seem to get it right. They got a fantastic engine in the back. That again was the Meteor engine, as we talked about earlier, the Rolls-Royce Meteor. It started life with a 17-pounder, then a 20-pounder, and this version is underneath all this is a Mark 12 with the L7 105mm gun, and it went through 13 marks in British Army service. This particular one, technically, we should call it an AVRE, Armoured Vehicle Royal Engineer, because at the end of its life as a gun tank, it was also at one point used as an artillery spotting tank by the Royal Artillery. They added fixtures to the front to put a dozer blade on, so it became a Royal Engineer variant. And it was in service well into the 90s. It was only handed over to the Tank Museum in 1998.
The Centurion really is a classic. If you go into the museum, still got time while it's open, we've got one of the Mark 1s in there, a very early one, and we've got some others in our tank factory, including an updated one. They're amazing, especially what the Israelis and the South Africans have done to them over the years. There's nobody. They've really improved them beyond measure and brought them more up to date, more powerful engines, even revised suspension, and it makes a heck of a difference. It means the tank can cope with other developments that are going on.
One thing that was asked of us was when a tank goes through 13 marks, is that because they've got it wrong? And it's exactly the opposite. It's because they've come up with a design that can be improved on over time. And again, just like the Spitfire, it can go through quite a number of marks. 13 marks in British Army service. And as David mentioned, still in service. Some variants with the Israelis, they've converted them. And the South Africans call it the Oliphant, so they've still got theirs in service. From the outside, it looks very different. They've added extra armour, so it doesn't quite look the same. They've got new diesel engines in the back, but underneath it all is still a vehicle that, when you think about it, was designed originally back in the Second World War.